Welcome to Dose of Social, your recipe for social media success. I'm Lindsay Mauch.
I'm Kayla Pearlstein.
And this is Dose of Social.
We are so happy to have our special guest today. We have Len Silverman and Bob Harms from Up to 11 Marketing. Bob and Len, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
having us.
I'd love for you guys to start by telling us a little bit about your background and what Up to 11 Marketing is.
Sure. I guess I'll start first and then I'll toss it over to Bob. My background, I've just grown up in advertising and marketing. My undergrad degree from University of Florida, go Gators, is in advertising, and got a master's at Emory in marketing. And I've worked in this field my whole career. I was a brand manager for Angelsoft Bath Tissue with Georgia Pacific. I ran the marketing for a $100 million fastener company in Clarksville, Georgia, which is beautiful if you've never been. And also was VP of marketing for the wholesale division, Fruit of the Loom. Bob and I met, and he'll talk a little bit about this too. Bob and I met as multiple unit owners of the Huntington Learning Center franchise. And we've been friends for 15 years, served on the ad fund board together, and just one day woke up and said, hey, why don't we kind of make a business out of it, take everything that we've learned and sort of the fun that we have both in marketing and problem solving and bring it to the world. And that's how we started Up to 11.
I love that. How many years has Up to 11 been in business?
Well, if we're counting years, kind of like a toddler, it'd be that much. It's about a year and a half so far.
Yeah, we'll talk like you do when you're dealing with young children. We're about 19, 20 months old.
Right.
And can you tell us the story behind the name of the company? Because I know there's significance there too.
Oh, Glenn, you can take this one too.
I got to tell it. So keep in mind, I'm a big believer. I love things that have dual meanings, right? So this is one of those dual meaning stories. Fundamentally, what it means from a business perspective is our ideal client is someone who's already doing pretty well. And we find a lot of companies are doing well almost despite themselves in a way where they're carrying the team on their back. They know what their product is and they know how to deliver it to the marketplace, and they're going. And all of a sudden things are going really well, but they get to a point where that only gets them so far. And to get to that next level, to get to that 11 level requires more help. So that's fundamentally the business side. On the fun side, it comes from a movie called Spinal Tap, which, by the way, Spinal Tap 2 is coming out September 12th. Be on the lookout for that. And one of the performers in the band is taking the documentarian around a museum that he's got, showing off guitars and amplifiers. And he's got one he's very, very proud of because the amplifier goes up to 11. And the guy says, well, couldn't you just make 10 louder? And he gets completely confused by that and just says, yeah, but this goes to 11. And I just always thought that was really funny. So that's ultimately really where the name came from.
Yeah, like Len said, most of our clients are a 10 out of 10, right? They're really successful individuals. They're really, really good at what they do. And our job is to take them up to 11. It's fun.
Yeah, I love the double meaning.
Yeah, that's great.
So I know you guys work with businesses that are a 10 out of 10, but for business owners who are feeling completely lost, where's the first place that they can start when creating their marketing strategy?
To me, the most obvious place to start is your customer. I mean, we're all in business. And I say this all the time. Businesses exist for two reasons. One is to make money. Obviously, we wouldn't do this if it wasn't that we're trying to earn a living. But two, and really fundamentally in a way more important, is we're trying to serve someone. We've come up with a product or a service that we think is valuable in the marketplace. And that's whether you're selling through to a consumer or you're selling through to another business. So for me, fundamentally, if you put this thing in an equation, the first box in the equation has to be a thorough understanding of your client. So one of the things that always drives me nuts, and I suspect maybe some of you as well, you go to a networking event and you talk to somebody and say, well, tell me a little bit about what you do. And they tell you, and you say, oh, okay, well, who's a really good client for you? Well, really everybody. Everybody can use
No,
those.
that's the worst.
No, that's not true. Number one, and number two, if you come out with that kind of an answer, you're really missing fundamentally what's inherent in the question, which is who's your ideal customer? Who is it that this product or service is really designed for? And that person or business that is going to buy from you, stay with you, tell other people about you. That's your ideal customer. And you've got to know them not only from the perspective of, oh, well, I talk to CEOs of companies of $5 million or more. It's who is that person and what does that person really need from you that only you can solve? I don't care how small your business is. That's the question you need to be able to answer first, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I think you and I have talked about this before, and Len, I think we have too. But for people that don't understand their ideal customer or their target audience, you can't figure that out on social media. You need to know that
No.
before you get to social media, or you're
Yeah.
throwing spaghetti at a wall and just hoping something sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people it's kind of like if I'm going out fishing and I don't know what kind of fish I'm trying to catch, I have no idea where to go or what kind of bait I need to use. So you got to identify that first,
Mhm.
or else you're going to waste an awful lot of time.
That was going to be similar to my point, Len, because when somebody answers you that everybody's my client, well, then everybody is everywhere, which means you need to be everywhere. Can you afford to be everywhere? Are your dollars being spent everywhere? So somebody that answers everyone is our client, then you've got to be everywhere to contact everybody. So if you want to talk about a good marketing strategy, your good marketing strategy is not being everywhere. That is a waste of dollars. Is where is that really ideal client? Where do I spend my marketing dollars? How do I spend my marketing dollars? And where is that real person going to find what I'm giving them? Because the answer can't be everywhere. Everybody is everywhere.
Yeah, you can't be everything to everyone, right? So,
Exactly.
like Everclear said. So, Len and Bob, how can someone go about figuring out who their ideal customer is if they don't know this or without making it super complicated? What are some suggestions that you have for this?
That's one of the areas where we excel. And very, very simply, it is how do you identify that client? Is you interview your existing clients. You find out who they are, where they got your information, where they found you. So how do you figure out all of the right questions to ask somebody to say, hey, you know what? I found you on LinkedIn. I found you on direct mail. I found you this way. I found you in home back, whatever it might be, right? How did they find me? And then how do we then work through that? How do you interview that client, find out what drove their decision making? They found you here. What drove them to make the decision to call you? What drove them to the decision to actually buy from you, to try you, right? And then buy from you, right? All those pieces is extremely important.
I think one thing I would add to that too, if you're preliminary, so if you're even before you've got a bunch of clients and you're just starting out, well, first of all, you created your business for a reason. So, let's say that you're in the roofing business. Well, you want to fix people's roofs. That's why you got into that business and you think you have some expertise. Maybe you don't have clients yet, or you don't have a lot of clients. If you don't, what you really need to do is to identify your story and determine what your brand stands for in the marketplace. Come up with what you think your ideal customer looks like based on that story. And you're going to have to do some A/B testing. I think, Kayla, you talked about how social media can't solve these things. One thing social media can do for you is allow you to fairly quickly and easily test different concepts and content. So you can get out there and try a couple of different things and start seeing where it resonates and where I'm actually getting attention and leads, and then start leaning that way. And then down the road, as Bob said, once you bring on board 5, 6 really good clients that you like working with and who like working with you, dig in with them. Why did you find us? What resonated with you? How do we differentiate from others in the marketplace? And you'll gain a lot of knowledge from that you'll be able to use going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great information for those listening. So just to recap, so it's use social media to get some additional intel on your potential audience, and then once you get those clients, use that opportunity to ask them questions, understand how they found you and what they're looking for, so you can start to use that to build out who your ideal customer is.
Yes.
Social media, we found is in dealing with social media especially is there are certain posts that people are going to react to. certain posts that people aren't reacting to. And that's going to immediately tell you whether the message is resonating. And it's extremely measurable, which is nice.
Yeah. And to Len's point, you need to test. You're never going to know. And you can't just do it once. You have to try it a couple of times. And if it continually doesn't work, then you need to move on and come up with something else.
Yeah. I tell people it's like compound interest in a bank account, right? I mean, you gotta be consistent, and you can't expect that you're going to put that one post out that's going to set the world on fire. And that's going to make your year. That's not going to happen. If it does, congratulations.
Yeah.
But more than likely, it's a matter of being consistent and making little adjustments along the way.
By the way, on a completely personal note, Len Silverman is the analogy king. He will come up with an analogy for everything and anything you go through. It's just fun to listen to him speak when he throws out an analogy. He's got one for everything.
I can't help it.
We've talked about the billboard one, which we might get into later, but that one's my favorite.
I love a good analogy.
Getting into marketing and social media, what's the most important thing a business owner should know before spending a single dollar on marketing?
I guess a kind of funny way to answer that is that you can waste a lot of money. I think that's the first thing to know. Bob and I come from the world of Huntington Learning Center. And so we had a brick and mortar store in multiple locations. Well, guess what? Everybody and their brother comes in with great marketing ideas for you. You can be on a shopping cart, you can be in the bathroom, and some of those things are very valuable and may be perfect for you, but you can't do it all. So to his point earlier, if you try to be everything to everybody, you're going to spend every penny that you've got. And so I think the most valuable piece of advice is, first, figure out who you want to talk to. Second, using the fishing analogy, figure out what ponds they swim in, right? Because I don't want to cast all of my marketing message on TikTok if I'm dealing with Gen Xers and baby boomers for the most part, because they're probably not on TikTok, not in great numbers. So knowing who that ideal customer is will also tell you where you should go to talk to them. And then the last thing I would say is, once you pick a vehicle of some kind, let's say you're going to do direct mail, don't do it once. You just can't gauge success by one and done. Commit yourself, develop a campaign and be in it. So if you're going to start a social media campaign, as an example, you should commit to probably about 6 months to really give it a chance to play out, and then set clear expectations for what you expect the results to be. The truth is, if I sell a consumer item that costs $4.99, yeah, I can drive a lot of interest and purchases online. If I sell a B2B service that starts at $5,000, you're probably not going to convert a whole lot through your online presence. It's going to be more about brand building and thought leadership. And then ultimately, you're going to have to find other ways to convert leads.
Up to 11, we talk about strategy all the time. And one of the biggest pitfalls that we find people fall into is that shiny new tactic, right? Somebody walks in your door and says, hey, this is what I'm going to do for you. You've never seen anything like it, right? And this is the result we're going to get for you. And if you don't vet that tactic out and you think it is your ideal client in that spot, is that tactic right for your business? You're going to take all those promises, and that salesperson wants you on board, and they're going to do everything I can. If you fall for the shiny new tactic, you're going to waste a lot of money.
Let me say one other thing too, because the other thing that drives me nuts is when I talk to people and they say, I don't spend $1 on marketing. Like, really? You don't spend $1 on marketing? I mean, I understand you're successful and you're doing well, but I think about all the opportunity that you're not taking advantage of by not spending money on marketing. Because there's no doubt that the most successful technique is one-to-one sales. It just is. But it fundamentally is restrictive because there's only so much of that you can do in the course of a week. Marketing allows you to kind of spread your messaging across a larger audience where you're, I call it like fertilizer in a garden. You're kind of making the ground more fertile. So when you grow a tomato, it's a nice, big, juicy tomato. So I understand where people take pride in not spending money on marketing, but I think that they're being, penny wise and pound foolish, quite honestly.
And that does catch up to you after a while too. Like I've had brands that are doing well and they resist doing marketing for years and years. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, we need to invest in marketing or we need to invest in social media. And at that point they're late in the game. So it is important to consider it.
There's some hidden costs in that too, right? Because I actually met with a client this morning before this podcast, and we were talking about. I said, "How much do you spend on marketing?" And he's like, "Throw a couple of $100 here, $100 there." I said, "Okay, then how are you getting your business?" He says, "Oh, I go out and I'm in all of these BNI groups, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing the other thing." And I said, he's a pretty well-to-do guy, and I said, "Okay, about how much do you make an hour? How much do you charge an hour to your clients? $350 an hour to your clients. How many hours are you spending in these networking groups a month? Oh, about 20 hours. Well, guess what? You just spent $7,000 this month on marketing because your time is actually out there networking instead of putting a vehicle in the background that can help you drive those leads, help you drive those customers." He didn't realize he's got a $7,000 time charge that he's missing right there because he said, "I don't spend any money on marketing." Guess what? You do.
Yeah.
That's such a great example too, because if you set up the proper marketing channels on your website and you build content and you have a funnel and you've got automated emails, that will work for you 24/7.
Yeah. And to Lindsay's point, you don't want to wait until it's too late to get on social media and to start marketing. You don't want to wait until business is slow to do it. You should be starting now.
Yep.
Yeah, use it to amplify what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Len and Bob, you guys focus on strategy before tactics at Up to 11 Marketing. Why is that so important for sustainable growth?
Well, we haven't really talked about this yet. It's a little timely, but a few people seem to be talking about Cracker Barrel right now. And
there you go.
It's amazing how many experts are coming out of the woodwork and talking about what Cracker Barrel should and shouldn't have done. I am big enough to admit, I don't know. I don't know what research they've done, what their consumer base has told them. I'm going to reserve judgment until I find that out. But I think it is a masterclass in really focusing in on why strategy is so important. If they simply jumped in without doing the work that they needed to do, which I highly doubt, and simply made the change that they did to the logo, then I would say, yeah, it's worth the backlash that they're getting, because that tactic would just sort of float out there without support as to why they made that change. And obviously, people are a little upset at the moment. And I will also say, just as a side note, that it's also a masterclass in crisis management. Every time I've ever studied crisis management, the first thing you need to do is get out in front of it. You need to respond immediately. I'm not seeing a lot of that happening, but if it had been me, I would have simply come out and said, first of all, let me say, we are so proud that our brand is as important as it is to this many people. We had no idea. Thank you so much. And it's amazing how many people care about Cracker Barrel. And the second thing is, we absolutely hear you. So let me tell you the reasons why we made the changes we did, but we are listening to you too. And if there are things that we need to kind of pull back a little bit on, we promise we're going to make those changes as well, because we love our customers and we don't want to do anything that's going to upset them. Anyway, that's just what I would have done. But back to the original question, it does show why strategy before that tactic is so critical. And again, I would imagine that, Cracker Barrel identified, and I think this is true, that they were having some difficulty with their mix, both their product offering and their marketing mix. And it was being reflected in lower revenue, although that was turning around a little bit recently with some changes they made, like adding alcohol to the menu. Mm-hmm. But profit margins were shrinking as well. But I would imagine that they were trying to attract a younger population. More than likely, they were seeing that their brand was starting to age out a little bit. And so they developed strategies to attract that younger audience. It's critical to do that before you just leap out there and try different tactics. Cracker Barrel being one example, just because they have a huge audience that they stood a chance of upsetting. But for the average small business person, it also means you could waste an awful lot of money by talking to the wrong people or talking to the right people with the wrong message. So I think ultimately, if you look at the efficiency of using your dollars and trying to grow at a steady rate, you want to form your strategy before you get out in front of your skis and spend those dollars on tactics. Long answer to a short question.
From a small business perspective, right? Another thing that a rebrand is a rebrand, right? And that's what Cracker Barrel's going through. Let's call it what it is, right? Because they not only changed their logo, they changed the interior, they changed the exterior, they changed the shopping experience to some extent. They made if I had to pick any great thing about what Cracker Barrel chose to do, it was creating more room in the aisles when you walked into that first lobby part where the general store was. Because I'm a big guy. Like I feel like I'm in there, and I actually want to get out of that space as quickly as possible because I feel proud. I feel like I'm going to knock something over. Maybe that was a great move, but for small business, right? When you're talking about strategy, it's okay. We're going to make an adjustment to our logo. Let's see what the response is. Then we're going to make an adjustment to the aisle sizes. Let's see what the response is. Then we're going to make an adjustment to the food and see what the response is. They went for a complete full rebrand on everything, which for a company that size, maybe it was the right thing. But you don't know what is driving customers away. The logo, because it's the hot topic, because, look at what Bud Light did. Look at what Aunt Jemima did. Look at what, all these different things happen. And then it becomes, how does it become political? Is taking the logo of the guy and moving the barrel and taking the guy out of the picture. Was it to be more inclusive? Was it not to be more inclusive? People are just automatically lumping it into that, right? Mm-hmm. So you first change the logo, then see how it happens. Again, small business, not a big full rebrand for a company, right? Then do you change a little bit of your promotion? Then do you change a little bit of the quality of your product? And what is it of those 4 Ps that you're changing that is actually moving a needle for you? And did this move the needle this way, or did it move the needle that way? So when you go in there as a small business and you change everything, you don't know what you're changing. You don't know what you're having. You don't know what effect that change is having, is what I should say, right? So if you make those changes one at a time, so you can really see where the needle moves, you know that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen so many of these redesign logo fails over the years. Like one that comes to mind for me is Gap when they redesigned their logo, and then because people hated it and they went back to their old classic logo. A couple years ago, the Chargers, the San Diego Chargers, they moved to LA. They unveiled a new logo. The internet went crazy, hated it. 2 days later, they changed it back. I mean, imagine all of those marketing dollars spent on redesigning this logo, just completely lost, and all the time lost just to revert it 2 days later.
I think Kind Bar did something with their logo and it was kind of just a flop, but they made it funny on social media, which I think worked for them. But
it also goes to speak to the power of social media too, because there was so much backlash on social media about these logos. They had to do something. They had to act. So
what's interesting in all that too, Lindsay, is you've got a question. Are those, like I look at it and I think about all the people that are complaining about Cracker Barrel, and I'm wondering, how much money did you spend at Cracker Barrel last year? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Have you even been to a Cracker Barrel?
Gets the black coffee and 2 scrambled eggs, once every 3 months. Does your opinion matter? Of course it matters, but sometimes it could be a little outsized. And so it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the ideal customer. And again, if you look at some of these logo redesigns, you take Gap as an example, did it speak to the ideal client they were really trying to speak to? And did they respond because they got a lot of social media backlash from maybe people who don't even shop at Gap? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that when you go out there with a branding message, regardless of what the message is, you want to have done your homework ahead of time. So it goes back to your original question about strategy. That's why it is so critical, particularly in today's world, because it is so easy for a keyboard warrior to come out and really trash you, particularly now that you can come out as anonymous on Facebook. It just becomes a lot easier to do that. So it's worth pumping the brakes for a couple of minutes. Our strategy first engagement, as an example, is only 60 days. So we're just asking people to take a 60-day break, learn about their business, learn about their market and their customer, then come out of the gates and spend much more efficiently because you're delivering the right message in the right place.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to what you guys talked about earlier too, is this starts with understanding who your ideal customer is, right? And then building a strategy around that ideal customer persona, and then get in and drill down into your tactics.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sticking with strategy, what are some of the biggest signs that a business is stuck in random acts of marketing instead of following a strategy?
To me, the biggest sign is the inconsistency. If they look like they have 3 or 4 different personas on social media, it's clear to me they're more than likely not working off a single playbook. Now, it could be they've identified 3 or 4 different ideal customer personas and they're going after each one separately. That is possible.
Mhm.
But sometimes you look and it's all over the place. And when I see that, I kind of have a feeling that they don't really have a centralized go-to-market strategy. And I think more than likely it comes from working with a tactician who understands their product but doesn't understand your product. And so you get involved with them and they start telling you all the great bells and whistles and shiny things that you could be doing. And because you don't have a fundamental brand strategy, sounds great. So then you spend that money and go off in that direction. And the next thing you know, in the marketplace, customers are getting kind of confused because they're seeing a whole lot of different faces of you and your company. So to me, inconsistency is really the sign that there's a problem.
Quite honestly, we can ask a client one question and get the answer to the fact that they're not really sure, right? List your marketing tactics in order of success, right? So this is working best for me. This is working second best. This is working third best. Then you ask them, how much are you spending on each and what's your ROI on each? And when they can't answer those questions, they don't have a strategy, right? And they're basically taking a bunch of tactics, they're throwing them out there, they're hoping something sticks, and they don't know which one's working well, which one's not working well. So when you start asking specific questions, what are your best tactics? How much are you spending on them and what's your return? That's that right there. When they can't answer that question, you know they haven't embraced strategy.
Yeah, it's so true. Definitely. So what role do you guys think brand positioning plays in attracting the right customers?
Again, I think that brand positioning is telling the story that your customer wants to hear. And so I think ultimately you listen to them first, right? I mean, if I'm reading a bedtime story to a 5-year-old, it's going to be very different than if I'm trying to read a bedtime story to a 16-year-old. So first, know your audience. And I think once you really understand that audience and you understand you and how you fit into the landscape, I think it's really important too. We haven't talked much about this, but know your competitors as well. It's really important that you create a competitive landscape. And I'm big on kind of 2x2 matrices, right? So you just kind of could be value price, whatever the indexes are that you use, map it out and figure out what's our lane, what do we own on this graph, and then really own it. And I'm a big believer in Story Brand. I don't know if you've read that.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend it for your listeners out there if they've not. It's just a lot of common sense in there where every brand has a story and the story is yours to tell. But remember that you and your product and your company are not the hero. The hero is your customer. And that makes a lot of sense to me. If you can do that and create a story around how does my customer benefit from this change that I'm going to bring to them, ultimately down the road, you're going to be successful. So that's kind of fundamental to building your brand.
One of the things that we do at Up to 11 that I think separates us out from a lot of people is we will do during our strategy first engagement, we will do a complete analysis of the competitors. And we'll identify what we feel the competitors are doing really, really well. And then we'll identify where we feel like there's a hole in their marketing or a hole in their product or a hole in that piece. And then we look at that hole from the competitors as a competitive advantage for our client? How do we now go in and fill that hole that the competitor is not doing? So when Len talks about knowing who your competitors are, it's really, really a big part of us developing a strategy for a client, because you don't want to go head to head on something somebody does really, really well. You want to fill the gaps where somebody's not doing something well. And that's something that we really are able to drill down on for our clients.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for business owners to understand.
Yes.
What would you say the biggest misconception about marketing is that you wish business owners understood?
I can tell you 100% the biggest misconception is because there are so many tools that are out there today, everybody thinks it's easy. That all I have to do is talk to ChatGPT, grab some stuff, put it in an email, start sending it out, and I'm good to go. Well, I've spent 30 plus years of my career focused on the things that we're talking about, and I can tell you it requires a level of expertise. There's no doubt you can make good looking stuff. You can get on Canva, produce some things that look really sharp. AI can produce a little video for you. All of that stuff is true, and you can do that. But there are fundamental factors in marketing that shouldn't be overlooked. We talked about the ideal customer persona. We talk about KPIs, and you cannot downplay the need to measure and we talked a couple of times about testing. What does testing look like? What am I trying to accomplish? And what are the measurables going to be in that testing? All of that a business owner might be able to do on their own. I'm not trying to take away from anybody's abilities, but the question is it the best use of your time? So when I got my MBA, I had a great professor, Professor Rosenzweig, and he used to talk about comparative advantage, the law of comparative advantage. He said, you may be the best at making copies in your office, but ultimately, is that what they're paying you for? It's like sometimes you got to let go of something. And we find the most successful business owners that we work with are the ones who can clearly identify the lanes that they don't want to be in. So even though you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. So if you want to get out there and figure out Canva and you want to spend your weekends, developing social media campaigns, absolutely you can do that. But at the end of the day, if you want to be a successful business owner who also has a personal life, there are some things you're going to want to invest in. And I think marketing is one of those. It is much more science than it is art. So I think it's important to focus on the science part of it. And that means generally at least work with someone professional.
If I had to answer the question, I'd probably answer it, first of all, the same. Len is 100% spot on. And if we're going to plug books, the book called Buy Back Your Time, right? It's a lot of these business owners are spending a tremendous amount of time, and they're working with the marketing, and they're trying. There it is. She just grabbed Buy Back Your Time. I've got my copy right back here. It's one of the ones I live by, right? So when you look at Buy Back Your Time, to Len's point, if your specialty is talking to your customers, if your specialty is making sure that you're getting your product delivered at the end, then you shouldn't be spending your time doing all the marketing. You shouldn't be developing ads. You shouldn't be doing that. Pay somebody to do those pieces and do what you're good at. If you're a roofer, be the best damn roofer and put the roofs on there. Make sure your guys are out there. Make sure you're spending your time doing those things, answering your clients, doing those things, right? But if I had to answer my biggest misconception about marketing, I think there's too many business owners that don't understand that sales is not marketing and marketing is not sales, right? When you're talking to your customer and you're selling your product, that is sales. Marketing is how did you drive that customer to have that conversation with you? And that's marketing. And I think there's too many business owners, especially small business owners, that think sales and marketing are the same thing, and they're not.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up too, because that is a very common misconception is companies lump marketing and sales in together. But yes, marketing absolutely complements sales and leads to sales, but you have to view them differently and make sure that you're treating them as separate aspects of your business.
Yeah, if anything, you talk about it being complementary. Quite honestly, in my professional experience, oftentimes sales and marketing are like this
Oh,
because
100%.
they have very different goals. And a lot of
Mhm.
times the marketing people look at the salespeople and are like, you're giving it away. You're killing our brand image. And the sales guys are like, you're moving too slow. I got to make a sale today. So they are 100% different. And I'm glad we're talking about that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when I was working in corporate, I would be in situations where the sales team would sell opportunities that weren't even actually accurate, and then it was up to marketing to fulfill them, and that was very tricky and
Oh yeah,
challenging. So
we've talked about that.
I think
Oh,
we've talked about it on the podcast before. So
Yeah, and then
don't even talk about sales and operations when operations has to deliver what the salespeople promise that we're just not even close to what they're delivering. So
right, or timelines, or they say, "Oh yeah, we can start this in February," and the engineering team is like, "No, we can't. This is not ready until March or April."
for sure.
So
Bob does bring up a good point. I don't know if this is going to be something we're going to touch on or not, but I do think it's important to bring up. Let's say that you've grown your company really well. And we've talked again about the quarterback, right? And he's got the team on his back or she's carrying the weight of everything. And then you've made the determination, I'm ready. I'm ready to scale. I'm ready to take my business to the next level. So now you bring in marketing professionals like us. We help develop a plan. The next question you got to ask yourself is, am I structurally able to handle this new business that I'm going to be bringing on? And we've got one or two clients right now that we're going through that with them. We saw this coming. We knew that there was going to be a lot more business coming their way. And there are structurally and operationally things that need to happen in order for that business not to collapse under its own weight. So we kind of have quickly come to realize up to 11 is much more than marketing. Quite honestly, if we're doing a service to our clients, we also are finding that we need to help them with those operational issues. Do I have the right salespeople? Do I have enough managers who are actually delivering the goods if it's a B2B product? Do I have the production to support the consumer product? Because I can tell you, I mean, when I worked for Fruit of the Loom, we were in the process of offshoring a lot of our production. And as a result, we were getting behind on orders. Well, the next thing you know, a company called Gildan came in and they took a lot of market share and have never given it back. So those are things that have to be taken into consideration. All growth is not good growth, and certainly growth that's not planned for is not good growth.
One of the things about Len and I is very often he says exactly what I'm thinking, and he did it again. He always does. But I will tell you that talk about marketing and rebranding. We said we're fairly new to the market. We've got a bunch of clients. We're doing what we have. We've been very, very successful. But we are going through a situation where we're going to rebrand from up to 11 marketing to up to 11 because we're actually providing a full level of C-suite services, so C-suite advice to our clients. It's marketing, it's operations, it's the strategy. It's everything that you could deal with inside your company. Are you ready to scale? All of those different things. So when we do what we do, we often you get a lot of free pieces of the thought process of how do we build it. Again, meeting with my client this morning, we were talking about how do you scale? When do you hire that next person? How do you hire that next person? Because guess what? They hired us and we fulfilled the promise. We brought you the business. Are you ready to deliver that business? Is always the next question.
yeah, I think that's so important too, is like being staffed appropriately or operationally to scale, right? Because otherwise, that could be very detrimental to a business.
I was going to say, as long as we're pitching books, I've got a book called
I was going to
Mauch.
mention it at the end.
Move it to the middle.
The
Wait.
only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's on this very subject. It's talking about building great teams and looking at it from a generational perspective. A lot of people are afraid of Gen Z as an example right now and don't know how to work with them. Bob and I have known Gen Zers since they were little kids through the Learning Center business. So we have a lot of great insight that is in this book, talking about how best to mesh them into your organization and then build teams that hold on to those people and ultimately get them to refer. So if you look at it as like a customer journey, It's an employee journey where ultimately you want them to have a good length of stay with you and also refer to other people. So a lot of those strategies are in this book for anyone who's interested in reading that.
And where can people find your book, Len?
I am on Amazon, or you can go to lensilverman.com and learn a little bit more about it, and you can order through that as well.
Len, hold the book up. You couldn't get a good view of it. Just go ahead. Not middle, more to the middle. Put it over your face. Put it over your face, Len. Seriously. There you go.
Is that an improvement?
Len is
But-
also a
Yeah, I
published
couldn't
author.
see the whole book in the video. So.
That's awesome that you're a published author. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. I was also going to mention it is available on Audible as well, because I know business owners a lot of times don't have time to sit down and read.
Mhm.
So they'll get to listen to my fantastic voice for about 4 hours.
That was going to be my next question. I was going to ask if you narrated your Audible version.
Yes. So if somebody needs any
Wonderful.
bedtime listening, it'd be perfect for that.
We did talk about bedtime stories for 4-year-olds and 16-year-olds. Now
Yeah.
these are the bedtime stories for business owners.
Yeah, I learned a lesson when my son was 3 years old. Don't tell the story of the shadow man who sleeps under his bed. That is not a good story to tell a 3-year-old.
Probably
I can see
not.
that.
So
Yeah.
learn my lesson on that one.
Oh my gosh. Well, Len and Bob, this was great. You guys shared so much wonderful information with us and for our listeners today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks
And
for
if-
what you do. I mean, you're providing a lot of value to people, and I'm sure they appreciate it. I know that we do.
Love hearing that. Thank
Well,
you.
no, it's always an honor to be asked to be part of a podcast. So thank you very much for seeing the value in us and what we do. So that's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if someone's looking to connect with either of you on social media, where can they find you?
Well, our business page is Up to 11 Marketing. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook. We both have personal pages there as well. That's always an easy way. Or you can go to up to11marketing.com, find out a little bit more about our company there, and particularly find out a little bit more about what a strategy first engagement really looks like with us. It's very customer friendly. It is designed to not take a lot of our customers' time. We do most of the work behind the scenes. So really, ultimately, we're only asking for about 4 hours total of our clients' time over the course of 60 days. So
Yeah,
it's a light
it's
lift
3
for
meetings.
them.
3 meetings:
Great.
an intake meeting, a midpoint meeting, and a final meeting where we give you deliverables and a full execution calendar at the end of that of the strategy first engagement. So, it's a really good. And quite honestly, if you want to reach us, Bob at Up to 11 Marketing or .com or Len at up211marketing.com. We keep it real simple. So reach
And they're
out when you
very
need
good at what they do. So Cracker Barrel, if you're listening, you might need to reach out to Up to 11.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hopefully.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, you guys, for joining us. And we're out. Thanks for listening
right.
to Dose of
Thank you.
Social.